Looks like we're waiting for a couple more people to join. I'm gonna just wait a couple more minutes. I think the BTC folks were going to be joining us. I don't see them on yet, so I just forwarded the meeting invite to them. So hopefully they can jump on. It doesn't look like maybe they got the original meeting invite. They're just gonna join and do a quick overview of the last quarter's investment report. There's Alan. Alan, I apologize. It didn't look like you were on the meeting invite. You're on mute.
Can you hear me now, Kathy? All right. Can you hear me, Kathy?
I can hear you, Alan.
That's strange. Let me see what's going on here.
Yeah, I got you too, Alan. So I think you're good.
Okay.
I'll let you proceed. I'm having some
Kathy's
technical
muted.
difficulties, so I will
Okay.
try to correct those, but I will let you guys proceed with the investment report while I try to get my system working again.
Okay. Let me share my screen. Okay, can everyone see the title page?
Yes. Yep.
Okay, so same format as we have been using for a while now. So we'll start with the investment policy statement compliance page. Current weighting cash is 3%. That's within the range of 0 to 10. And then within the fixed income category, which is 71%, we're within the range minimum of 60 and the maximum of 90. Most of the portfolio is investment grade. Almost all of it is investment grade. In fact, 62, almost 63% in AAA to single A, 13.6% in triple B, and then below investment grade is just these. Well, it's just preferred stock, which technically, depending on how you want to look at fixed income or equity, isn't fixed income at all, or it's preferred equity. So 0.1%. So excuse me, 1%. So most of the bonds are in fixed income, most of the bonds are investment grade, and most of that allocation is single A or above. Moving down to equity, the weight as of March 31st was almost 26%, specifically 25.9%, right, slightly under the maximum of 30%. Not a lot of change from prior quarters, certainly not a lot of change from the end of the year. when the market was up strong in the fourth quarter. It was up again significantly in the first quarter, but under that 30% maximum. Most of the allocation is large cap, 19%, as you can see here. Small cap, 2.5. Real estate, a little less than 1, and then international stocks, 3.8. So all of these weights, including the fixed income weights, are in compliance with the guidelines over here that are specified in the investment policy statement. So no need to rebalance or make any adjustments due to the weights of the different asset class categories. Other limitations, other guidelines, as we might say in the investment policy statement. First one, investment in any one corporation. It's limited to 2%. And right now, the largest weight combination of a stock and a bond is 1.7. So well under that 2%. Mortgage-backed securities, 8.1% under the maximum of 30%. Corporate bond exposure, almost 45, under the maximum of 70. Municipal bonds, you can see that it's almost at 16%, but under the maximum of 30. And then government direct obligation agency bonds, just a little over 2%. And we can have as much of that as we would deem fit, but not a lot of that right now. So all of the guidelines shown on this page, and then all the guidelines in the investment policy statement, we're in compliance with all of them. So again, no adjustments need to be made for any non-compliance. No discussion needs to be had either for any non-compliance. So if there was, we would have that conversation, but none of that. So any thoughts or questions on any of that? We'll do a more full investment policy statement review in the July meeting. But for now, these are the details as usual.
Alan, I'm going to throw something in there that I may be jumping the gun ahead. But one of the things that the committee talked about after your last meeting was a desire for the BTC team to do some modeling for us of some slight adjustments to the 70-30 investment policy mixture. One of the things that I've observed is that we really aren't getting all the way to that 70%, 30%. There's always kind of that buffer of time and some of the other elements. And so my ask, and I think I'm speaking on behalf of the committee, is that in the July meeting is if you could bring us some of the projections, some modeling for what I'm going to refer to as kind of smaller adjustments, like a 65-35 and even maybe a 60-40, so that we can look at as for my brain, as I think about a 70-30 policy mixture, we're not really exactly at the 70-30. Like right now, we're at about 74-26. And so what would that look like? Some of those components of risk. And you provided some of that to us about 6 months ago, but I think anything that might help us for us to have that discussion about what is the risk, what are the potential growth opportunities there if we make those sort of slight adjustments, and does that give your team the flexibility to really get a lot closer to a 70-30 mixture, or maybe something that goes and pushes a little bit more on the equity side?
Understood. We'll provide that at the July meeting. Okay.
Thank you.
Next page. The table in the upper half of the page is a summary of the market values of each of the asset classes as of March 31st. So we talked a little bit about the weights here on the IPS page. They were produced here in the upper left of this page, and cash and equivalents, so that's money market plus the fixed income, is 73.7% of the weight, indicated by these two rows right here. Again, that weight can fluctuate between 60 and 90. And so that's right where we are. Well, excuse me, I should have added tax exempt in here as well. Small amount of tax exempt fixed income. Those are actually taxable bonds. The title in the system doesn't quite portray them as they are, but nevertheless, a little over 74%, not 73, a little over 74% in fixed income, and then the remainder in the various categories in equity. So U.S. equities make up the most or the largest portion of the equities. Smaller allocations to small cap REITs, foreign developed and foreign emerging. So we touched on part of this on the prior page. We don't have it, well, excuse me, more details on that coming in a minute. The annual, the asset allocation, the breakdown of it is shown by the bar chart in the lower left. So each of the colors represents a specific asset class within the allocation. For example, the US large cap equity is represented by the navy blue portion that I'm highlighting here with the cursor. And what we're looking for on in this bar chart is just simply not a lot of fluctuation unless we deliberately change the asset allocation. We're just looking for not much fluctuation in the size of each of these pieces of the bar, and we're certainly not seeing that. So not a highly detailed exercise, but nevertheless, just a quick, easy test to see. We certainly wouldn't expect from market movement dramatic changes in the size of these pieces of the bars, and we're not seeing that, so that's good. And also it gives you an easy, it's another way for the user to see. Maybe this is helpful for some of you, I don't know, but it's it certainly is for me, just to give you, some people process sort of the asset allocation quantitatively. Others, they process it better with a picture, and this just highlights just how big the fixed income allocation, which is in gray, is compared to the equity allocation, which is the navy blue, the black, and the green, and then this darker gray. So this is consistent with what Blake was just saying. It's about 70-30, but not quite. So most of the allocation is here, the rest of it's right here. I'll turn over to John to talk about performance. Are there any questions at this point? Okay, John, take it away.
Okay, thank you, Alan, and good afternoon, everyone. I just wanted to give a little bit of a public service announcement. Jeff Birdsley, the head of our fixed income team, who plans to join the call to discuss the fixed income component of your portfolio. He's had some trouble connecting to the call. As a matter of fact, if you saw me step away a moment ago, it's because Jeff was at my door telling me he was having some issues. So hopefully he will be able to join the call. And if not, I'll pinch hit for him as best I can. But let's go ahead and jump into the performance on page 4. This is
John, I can try to forward him the invite again and see if that helps.
Yeah, that would be great. I did that, so I don't know if it helped, but if you would do it as well, maybe that would be the trick that would get him into the meeting. So because he's got lots of good insights into fixed income that he would love to share. Just going over the performance, this is as of March 31st. So 3 months and year to date, obviously the same time period because this reporting is based on a calendar year. So you can see for that 3-month period, the total return of the portfolio. So this is the income received plus the change in the value of the underlying assets, appreciation, depreciation, that combined to create a return of just under 3% for the 3-month period. The benchmark that's utilized in assessing the performance for the plan was at 1.15%. So you were basically about 1.8 percentage points above that benchmark. And as you look down the column, you can see the biggest contribution came from the equity holdings. The equity market did have much better performance in the first quarter than the bond market did, where you can see on that line for fixed income, the BB, which stands for Bloomberg, U.S. Aggregate Bond Index was actually down a little bit in terms of the fixed income world, but your bonds were actually up at 1.3%. So once again, kind of going across the top there in terms of that total fund, you can get a sense of how your portfolio has done once again on that total return basis relative to the underlying benchmark. And you can see it exceeds that benchmark in each one of those time periods. We did have a little bit of a lag on the equity side, the U.S. equity specifically compared to benchmark. One of the things that in terms of this reporting, we do have that standalone segment in real estate, and we've done that primarily to enhance the income in the portfolio. I can share with you, real estate was the poorest performing sector of the equity markets in the first quarter. Actually, I believe it was the only sector that had a negative return, just very marginally, but the rest of the market was up somewhat substantially. As you can see, that benchmark for the quarter was up just a little over 9%, whereas I mentioned real estate specifically was was down just fractionally for that same period. But once again, we focused on that real estate because of the current income, and we'll see that that case is still valid. And we do think real estate may be getting to a point where there's going to be some upside potential there because it has suffered some declining values of late. So, but we do think that maybe we're getting close to an inflection point. Just kind of moving on to the, well, first I will ask, is there any question on the performance page? Okay, hearing none, we'll just kind of move into the brief summary pages for the various underlying strategies. And I'll hold off fixed income until the end in case Jeff has the opportunity to join. And I'll just jump into the equity holdings on page 6, starting with the large cap value. This is the predominant strategy utilized in your equity portion of your portfolio. And we migrated to that years ago when interest rates were declining and got to be such low levels. We utilized this because of the additional income that came with this strategy, in addition to appreciation potential, but a much healthier level of income than the overall equity markets. And that's still the case. As you look in the upper left-hand corner at the equity characteristics, you can see the dividend yield 2.7% versus the benchmark of about 2.4%. And that's a value benchmark. That's not the overall equity market, which we'll see in a moment has a lower yield. So the yield advantage of your value holdings is pretty measurable given where the overall market is, and this particular strategy at 2.7%. Directly below that, excuse me, the breakdown in terms of sector allocation versus the stated benchmark for the strategy. And then, of course, I know some of you are very familiar with this format. In the lower right corner, the top 10 holdings for the strategy as of March 31st. Once again, when you get into the large cap strategies, there's a number of names that are very familiar to us all as consumers and investors. J.P. Morgan, Procter & Gamble, obviously, Cisco Systems, Walmart, BlackRock, et cetera. So for the most part, very large, well-known firms. And with that, I'll move on to the next page, which is page, I guess there's no page number on that. Page 7.
Yeah, page 7.
Page 7, and we're looking at the large cap core strategy, or we call it the core equity strategy. And this is the one we added during the first quarter. As we've seen interest rates go up on fixed income, we felt there was an opportunity to incorporate a little more growth flavor into the equity holdings. So as I mentioned a moment ago, predominantly over the last few years, we've have used the value strategy as our focal point because of that higher income. We brought this one in to provide a little more growth potential in terms of appreciation, given the fact that we are getting more income from the fixed income side now than we had for the last few years. So just kind of taking a look at this strategy, since this one is new to you in terms of recent incorporation into the portfolio. In that upper left-hand corner, you can see the characteristics for this strategy. And here what we do is we focus on developing holdings that create a portfolio that have faster earnings growth than the benchmark, but lower valuation. And as you've heard me say many times in the past, that price earnings ratio is kind of that basic measurement of valuation in the market. And you can see the price earnings ratio for this strategy is less than it is for the benchmark. And to once again kind of hone in on that dividend yield, you can see it's 1.3%. And that compares to that 2.7 that we saw for the value strategy a moment ago. So this is a broader representation of the stock market incorporating, value and growth into one strategy. But you can see it has a much lower dividend yield than the value strategy. So just once again, kind of reiterating why we've used that value strategy in this low rate environment. In terms of top 10 holdings, even more recognizable names in terms of the holdings here: Microsoft, Apple, Alphabet, formerly known as Google, and then JP Morgan once again, Chevron, MasterCard, et cetera. So predominantly large, well-capitalized companies, very well known. And as you take a look at that sector allocation on the left-hand side of the page, not a lot of meaningful differentiation between the strategy and the benchmark at this moment in time. We've had some movement within the markets within the last couple of months where we've had some leadership shifts. You've heard a lot of talk over the last couple of years about the Magnificent Seven in the stock market and the very dominant role they've played in performance within the stock market. We've seen that erode a little bit to somewhat this year to where they haven't been as dominant as they were last year and in prior years. So a little broadening of the market, which is a good thing, a healthy thing. So right now our positioning is not totally or markedly different from the benchmark, but that will change as we move forward. On the next page, taking a look at the small cap strategy. This strategy, once again, as its name implies, gives you exposure to the smaller company component of the U.S. equity markets. And once again, looking at those characteristics, it's very similar in its management mandate as the core equity strategy we just looked at, just doing it within a small company universe as opposed to the larger companies that the core equity strategy focuses on. But once again, we do want to see that price earnings ratio lower than the benchmark, which it is. So we want to focus on having good value in the portfolio along with the growth potential that comes along with it. And once again, as you take a look at the top 10 holdings of this strategy, not quite as recognizable as we get into those smaller companies. But once again, the strategy has done very well so far this year. As a matter of fact, in terms of performance relative to its benchmark, it's about, well, we say 1,000 basis points, which basically means 10 percentage points better than its benchmark so far this year in the first 4+ months of 2024. So off to a great start. And hopefully that momentum will continue as we go throughout the remainder of the year. On page 9, we have the international strategy. And we've commented on this before, but just to give everybody a reminder, this is a strategy that we manage utilizing something called ADRs. ADR is an acronym that stands for American Depository Receipt. So we're investing in securities that are backed by international stocks. So for example, if there's an international company and they want to trade on the New York Stock Exchange, they'll create what's called a depository receipt, which is a receipt that is backed by a certain number of shares of a foreign company. And these trade on the New York Stock Exchange domestically, so we can participate in foreign markets without having to trade on the foreign markets. We can get you exposure to international equities through investments that are listed here in the US. Now, one of the nice things about this strategy is it also has a nice healthy dividend yield. As you can see, as of March 31st, it was 2.8%. So once again, providing a healthy level of income in addition to some appreciation potential. Once again, with this strategy, as you look at those top 10 holdings, maybe not quite as familiar as what you would see domestically, but Unilever makes a lot of consumer products that are sold here in the United States. And of course, I think everybody's familiar with the chocolate that comes from the Nestle company. So some familiar names there, focused on larger companies for the most part, well established, that do supply some meaningful income. The last equity segment would be the real estate on page 10. And excuse me, as I mentioned a moment ago, we added this to the mix a while ago to provide some additional income. As you take a look in that upper left quadrant there at the equity characteristics, you can see the dividend yield on this component of your portfolio is about 6.3% as of March 31st. So once again, some very meaningful dividend yield coming from it, although from a total return perspective, real estate has kind of struggled. And part of that is due to what we're seeing in terms of trends in commercial real estate, where, you know, in significant part because of work from home, companies are utilizing less office space. So there's part of the real estate market that's struggling in that regard, but there's a lot more to the real estate market than just commercial. There's multi-home, there's warehousing, et cetera. And as you take a look at that list of top 10 holdings, you can get a sense of some of that, where there's an industrial company, et cetera. So definitely plays a role in the portfolio, enhancing the income. just has not been the greatest total return vehicle. But as we said, we think we may be close to an inflection point where the performance there is going to start to improve. So I'm not sure. There is Mr. Birdsley, just in the nick of time. So with that, I will transition over to Jeff, and he can give you some highlights in regard to your fixed income holdings.
Thank you, John. The performance this year has been positive, all in all, for the first 3 months. And, just recently, for the month of April, thank you, Alan, you can see a very positive return outperforming the benchmark across all the periods in which are demonstrated all the way out years. And so we do continue to outperform on a relative basis. It was positive returns for the first 3 months, but as we all know, interest rates decided to take a different direction in the month of April. And we saw interest rates rise as a result of actions by the Federal Reserve to hold off on in the number of
Hey,
cuts that they would
Jeff,
make
you're
this
cutting
year.
out. So
Yeah. Okay.
you're cutting
Sorry.
out. So you might want to be, might want to be brief.
Okay. So the anyway, everything is in good shape right now. We are in the portfolio is doing well. The stability, the credit rating is holding very solidly, and as it shows there, current yield 5.37% is what we're buying right now, essentially around that yield. I believe that's above where our target point is. Quality remains very high, A1. Effective duration just slightly below the index, which has been helping in a rising interest rate environment. There is a concentration down below. You can see we are concentrated in corporate bonds. That has served very well in the first 3 months as spread on those bonds narrowed. That means on a relative basis, they outperformed other parts of the bond market. And down below, you can see credit quality remains extremely strong overall across the portfolio. So no major changes in the asset classes. We are looking at making a few changes to continue to improve the overall yield of the portfolio going forward and to create environments where we have a very stable cash flow in order to meet the monthly distributions that occur. So thank you.
All right. That concludes our comments. Any questions or thoughts before we sign off? Blake, we will get the analysis that you requested, or we will prepare the analysis you requested and present that at the next meeting in July. We'll also, as I mentioned, we'll do a review of the IPS, the investment policy statement, and share that with you. And also too, we will likely be making some adjustments to the benchmark for the portfolio, given that we added the large cap core allocation in March. And so the effect of that on the equity performance is going to be more significant as we move through time. And what we typically do is we give, for changes like that, we give it a month, and then we make adjustments to the benchmark so that you can more accurately gauge the performance of the portfolio overall, and for that piece of the allocation. So more to come on that as well. So lots to discuss in the July meeting. Until then, let us know if you have any questions. You can route those through Kathy. And thank you for your time and your business, and have a good afternoon.
Thank you.
Appreciate it, team. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is Kathy frozen? Think so.
Just making sure it wasn't me.
Is this
I don't think she knows.
dollars and then the 2,500 per year of service. So I just wanted to let you guys know that that was approved. I also want to let you know that a lot of
Kathy?
people listen to the board meetings. Uh-huh.
Kathy, sorry. You were frozen for a little bit, so I don't know if we caught everything that you started saying.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm going to turn my camera off because I'm having some weird issues with my computer. Maybe that'll
Yes.
help. At least you won't see
Yes.
me in a weird frozen state.
No worries. If you want to restart that again. Sorry about that.
Okay. I'm not sure how much you heard. So just to recap last night's board meeting, the DMTRS retirement incentive was approved. It's approved for DMTRS only. It's not an IPERS and DMTRS this time. It's just DMTRS. It was approved for 55 and 20 years of service. And it is the $50,000 flat rate and then an additional 2,500 for each year of service. I will say there are a lot of people that listen to board meetings because my email kind of blew up this morning after that. So that just shows that people do listen and pay attention, which is good. And their questions are, what are my next steps? In the agenda item, it said that the deadline to let us know is October 1 of 2024. So I will be getting information ready to send out hopefully by the beginning of the week, letting people know that they are eligible and then what the next steps would be. And that will go out probably several times because there's a long period of time between now and October, and I don't want to send it now and somebody forget or say they didn't get it, but I'll try to do it multiple times throughout. Has anybody gotten any feedback regarding the incentive?
I think generally, Kathy, the comment is about, and we've discussed this already, is what will be the timeline for something for 2026? Because there are some folks who are in that position of saying, I don't necessarily want to retire in 25. And we've discussed about trying the best to secure a loop of time for those folks, or a mechanism for if a 26 decision isn't made by October. I'm just making this up. Let's say it's decided in December, that we would give the opportunity for someone to say, I would like to rescind for 25 and continue if something is in place in 26.
Right. And I don't know what those deadlines will be. That's a conversation that, needs to be determined by the superintendent on what their plan and what his plan is. I will certainly keep that conversation in the forefront. So hopefully we can get some decisions, but right now I can't commit to what those deadlines might be. But we do know that this one is approved and that it does currently have an October 1 deadline. We can always move that deadline. Just put October 1 for now. So we've got something to shoot for as far as deadlines go. The responses I've received from DMTRS participants are very favorable. I have received some not so favorables from IPERS participants, which was to be expected. And I've just explained that, we have the opportunity to define early retirement program or retirement incentives. I always want to say early retirement, and it's not that anymore. Retirement incentives on an annual basis, and this is the one that the board has decided. This is the one that was advanced by management and voted on by the board. And I'm not getting into details of why DMTRS versus IPERS. It's just that this is the package that was offered and approved by the board.
This is for 25, 26 school year, is that right? Retired,
24,
So they-
25.
okay, 24, 25, okay,
So not the end of this school year, but the end of the upcoming school year.
gotcha, that's what I thought.
And there were 3 individuals who had submitted their retirements prior to this going to the board that were DMTRS participants. I did reach out to them prior to it even going to the board and saying, this is going to be going to the board. I anticipate approval. If you wish to rescind, here's the steps you need to take. And I understand that there's some frustration on the parts of those individuals going, well, gee, if I would have known, I wouldn't have, and now my mind's been made up and I've made plans. Unfortunately, with the way that our retirement incentive is, that it's approved on an annual basis, that's kind of the risk you take. And I don't love that answer, but that's the way that it is. You know, we gave them the opportunity to rescind, and I know if you've already announced your retirement and your heart's set on your retirement date, then you follow through with it and you forego this incentive. So there's choices to be made. Excuse me. That's kind of where I'm at on that. So my plan is, like I said, hopefully by the first of the week, at least to have filtered out everybody who's eligible and send it to information to those people who are eligible to say, you know, here's next steps. I still have to get the agreement put together with legal and that kind of stuff, but hopefully we'll be rolling that out sooner rather than later. But knowing that the deadline isn't until October, and it's not that we're taking, you know, the first 10 people that apply, I think we're good. Is there anything else you think from my end that needs to be done for that?
I was just curious, do you have the number for how many actives are retiring this year?
3.
Just 3. Okay,
Mhm.
thank you.
Anything else for the good of the cause?
So I have one thing. So I'm actually coming back to DMPS next year. So it's not like, so I haven't been like board approved yet because I still got to renew my teaching license and all of that fun stuff. So I'm trying to finish up the semester at Drake and then get that in. So that means I don't know what that means for my position on here, but I wanted to kind of give you all a heads up and let you know. So I'm going to be rejoining the DMPS world next year.
Yay, congratulations.
Thanks.
So when you rejoin, you'll be in IPERS, of course. So
Right.
I don't know if that would disqualify you or qualify you to continue as a community member because you won't be in
But she would
DMTRS.
She would still have a
Right.
DMTRS balance from her previous. So she'd still be she'd be an inactive active,
Yeah,
because we love our terminology.
An inactive, active, who's active?
Yeah, exactly.
Hold on, I'm helping build a Darth Vader Lego here for my son. So it's one of those days we have baseball dance and everything else. So
Oh, I
Hi,
understand.
George.
I just saw in the chat, Mary Simmons said she just signed out mistakenly, and could I explain the details of the retirement incentive again? The details can also be found right now in the board documents and from the agenda item. It is a retirement incentive for DMTRS participants only. Age 55 and 20 years of service are the qualifiers. And then it would be $50,000 and then an additional $2,500 for each year of service with the district. And right now we have a deadline date to apply of October 1 of 2024. And more details will hopefully come out, at least an email telling people you're eligible, and stay watching for further details. Hopefully that will come out by the beginning of the week. So. All right. Other than that, I don't know anything. So I think we're good. Thank you all for your time.
All right.
Enjoy
Bye.
your evening. Bye-bye.
bye, everybody.
Bye.